Bright QT. Every student matters.
Now coming to discuss with this, the constitutional provisions for safeguarding the interests of the minorities. So here we are coming to discuss about that, the provisions which is made in the constitution for the interest, means welfare of the minority group of people. What are the provisions made in the constitution? So these provisions we have to discuss under the two articles 29 and 30. But before to this, why these were felt by the constitution makers to make the provisions or special provisions for this minority group of the people? Already we knew about that. In our country, we are the followers of the different religions. But the different religions, the diverse religions, sometimes they create some problems for smooth running of the democracy. There were riots occurs in our country. It's a very in a general basis it happens. So in a democracy, what is the main principles of democracy? Democracy is ruled by the majority. So there is a fear among the minority group of people like Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, etc. and any other cultural groups. They have fear about the majority. What the fear they have? They thought that their rights would be taken away by the powerful people who they are running the country. So to remove such fear or misgivings, the Indian constitution, our constitution, what our constitution? They have done the provisions for safeguarding the interest of the minorities. So the minority group of the people, they cannot be oppressed by the majority group of the people or by the majority of the people. So under these two articles of the Constitution of India, which refers to the constitutional provisions for safeguarding the interest of the minorities. These two articles are basically implemented in our constitution. How to safeguard, how to protect, to provide or to guard the small group of the people, the minority people. So coming to discuss about Article 29, the protection of interest of minorities. This is headed like this in the constitution, protection of interest of minorities. How they are going to give the protection according to the constitutional provisions? Any section of citizens residing in the territory of India, any section means all citizens, whether caste is no bar, religion is no bar, language is no bar. Means any section, any residing in the territory of India having a distinct language, script or culture of its own shall have the right to conserve the same under the cultural and educational rights. This has been explained where it is under the fundamental rights of the cultural and educational rights. This is explained in that fundamental rights. No citizen, this is about that, what it says that no citizen who they are shall be denied admission into any educational institution. In the previous slide we have discussed about that they were not supposed to get admission in any of the good schools. But according to this Article 29, the people who they belong from any of the category, no one can deny the admission to take admission in any of the educational institutions maintained by the state. State here means the government, maintained by the government. Private institutions are excluded from here. Whatever we are discussing, we are talking inside this chapter means that the government run institutions or in government jobs. This is not fit for that, the private institutions and the private jobs. So what it says that no citizen shall be denied admission into any educational institution maintained by the state or receiving aid out of state funds on grounds only religion, race, caste, language, or any of them. So under this provision, this is the minority group, how they are getting protected. Next, it is Article 30, right of minorities to establish and administer educational institutions. Both these articles are the part of the cultural and educational rights, which is one of our fundamental rights. So according to this Article 30, all minorities, it may be on the basis of religion, maybe on the basis of the language, shall have the right to establish, administer educational institutions of their choice. They can have to do so. The government makes efforts to protect the right of the minorities and solve them. The president also appoints 2 Anglo-Indians in the Lok Sabha to represent the community adequately. This is the another provision, which is when the right has been given to the president, can appoint the 2 Anglo-Indians. We have total number of MPs in our parliament, Lok Sabha. We have 552 maximum. Present strength is 543 plus 2. This 2 is from the Anglo-Indian community and the president has the right to appoint them to represent that community in the Lok Sabha. The rights of the minorities are protected in India. This has helped to remove the bitterness and ensure smooth functioning of democracy. This is all about that, the Article 30. In making any law providing for the compulsory acquisition of any property of an educational institution established and administered by a minority referred to in clause. Everywhere means that the compulsory acquisition of any property or of an educational institution which is established and administered by a minority is referred in this article. What are the provisions for the protection of their cultural and educational rights, their institutions? A state shall ensure that the amount fixed by or determined under such laws for the acquisition of such property, how to acquire such property for the development, for the establishment of that institution for the minority group has been mentioned in that article. The state shall not in granting aid to educational institutions. State is not helping to grant the aid, to give the money for the establishment of the institutions, but discriminate against any educational institution on the ground that it is under the management of a minority. But if any of the institution is managed by the minority group, it cannot be discriminated also. There the financial aid is not been given, so the discrimination is also not been done. So whether it is these institutions of established by the minority can be based on their language, can be based on their religion. This in a simple term we can say that government cannot interfere in the promotion of their, in the practice of their, in the preservation of their culture and language. This is the Minority Commission looks into the problem of minorities and they solves them. This is also the work done by the minorities. They have to make the The government also make efforts how to protect them. So they are not been discriminated. They have not been oppressed by the higher class people or by the majority class. So in this way, the rights of the minorities are protected in India. Particularly in these two rights, Article 29 and Article 30. Both these are related to the constitution, cultural and educational rights as a means the one of the fundamental rights of the Indian citizens, and they are properly guided and mentioned in these rights, and according to that, no one can deny, no one can discriminate. So this has helped to remove the bitterness and ensured smooth functioning of democracy. So every citizen, whether they are untouchables or whether they belong from the higher caste, they cannot be denied. Then coming to discuss about that, the condition of tribals in India, or who they are called the tribals. Which group falls, which people from which region they fall under this category. The term Adivasi is a Sanskrit word meaning original inhabitant, without any change, without any development, in a natural way of living, in the nature. They have traditionally inhabited the hills, forest, and the dry plateau regions of India. The Adivasi communities listed in the Indian Constitution as scheduled tribes. How they have been mentioned in our Constitution as scheduled tribes. They are traditionally dependent. Why they are living in? Why they are called as the original inhabitant? Because they were traditionally dependent on forest for food, fodder, housing, cattle, and craft work. For everything, that depends upon the forests. They depends upon the nature. So the land of tribes, this is especially the Chota Nagpur area, Chota Nagpur Plateau region, specially considered as the land of tribals. We have the three plateau regions, Malwa Plateau, Deccan Plateau, and the Chota Nagpur Plateau. Malwa Plateau is northwestern part of India. Then Deccan Plateau is a triangular shape in the southern India. And the Chota Nagpur Plateau is in the northeastern side. The entire Jharkhand, parts of Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, and the West Bengal comes under that Chota Nagpur Plateau. So that way, this Chota Nagpur Plateau region is especially considered as the land of tribals. And its region is also rich in mineral resources. So both the way we are coming to discuss the natural inhabitant of the tribal group of people of our country in Chota Nagpur Plateau region, and as well as Chota Nagpur Plateau region is rich in mineral resources. Several mines were dug and factories were built by the government in the process of modernization and industrialization, as it is the mineral rich belt of our country. So the various projects has been launched by Government of India to modernize this region, and the industrialization also took place by opening of the several mines, and rich tribal belt of Chota Nagpur region were gradually displaced. What happened finally? This has been gradually displaced now. The people of this area, this region, now they are displaced. Displacing is done due to that the mining work. The deforestation is done before to dig the land to take out the minerals. So the displaced Adivasis lost their identity, their traditional occupation, and the way of lifestyle in the name of the development. So this way, try to understand how their life has been getting affected with this modernization and the industrialization. They have lost their identity. Because of that, the government also has developed the many of that the developmental programs. Because of that, minerals are found over here. So industrialization was very easy to develop over here. So this way, they have lost their traditional occupations, the end of their traditional lifestyle, which had resulted in marginalization and exploitation, which forces them to continue to live in the acute poverty. What it says that this is to end their traditional lifestyle. Because of that, the deforestation, because of the industrialization, they were forced to live the outside of the forest. They have to leave their natural inhabitant, and which resulted in marginalization and exploitation. And this also forces them to continue to live in acute poverty, abject poverty. As a result of exploitation, many a times the tribal people started fighting back to protect their land. So, one example is quoted about the Narmada Bachao Andolan. When Sardar Sarovar Dam was being constructed, where it is, this Andolan was related to for what? Sardar Sarovar Dam. In Gujarat. This dam was been constructed in Gujarat, and for the construction of this dam, a large section of the tribal people were supposed to displaced. Then they have started protest against the government. And this is the name of the river on which this dam has been constructed. So this protest movement was only named as Narmada Bachao Andolan, to save Narmada. What it is? To save. Bachao, save. Andolan means movement. So they have organized, and their main, because of that, a large section, a large number of the tribal population, they were displaced. Rehabilitation was done by the government, but they did not like to shift, to leave their natural inhabitant. But the majority group of the people were benefited with this Sardar Sarovar Dam, so government was not having any option. So the different types of the promises were done by the government under the leadership of Medha Patkar. She was the leader of this Narmada Bachao Andolan. They have done the agreement with the government for the protection of this tribal people, and this dam was finally been constructed. So this way, this Narmada Bachao Andolan became very popular because the large scale tribals were protested for this, the construction of dams, because their natural inhabitants were getting disturbed. The government has launched many schemes for their welfare, but they were disenchanted, dissatisfied with them. The schemes have provided more money making opportunities to the rich and the higher caste and the Adivasis, who have mostly been given the option of manual labor. This is all about that, the government's efforts. The government has launched many schemes. Many of the programs are working. Many of the efforts has been working for the welfare and the development program of the Adivasis. But they are not satisfied. With all the schemes have provided more money making opportunities to the rich and the higher caste and the Adivasis, who have mostly been given the option of manual labor. Now this is the shortcomings of the government also. What it says? This is the government has launched many schemes for their welfare. Many schemes and efforts, which we will have to discuss again in the later part of the chapter. But what it is that? But the most of the opportunities, what the government is working on that part is for the rich and the higher caste people. And this minority group of the people, they so-called Adivasis, have mostly been given the option of the manual labor. Just now we have discussed the example of this Narmada Bachao Andolan. Displacement was done, rehabilitation was done by the government. But naturally, these people, the tribal people, who they were supposed to live in the nature, their land was occupied for the construction of the dam. And what type of the work they can do, they can have been offered. As that is not only that the government's fault, but they are also not educated. So obviously they will get the option of the manual labor. So both the way, we cannot always criticize only the government. Government can work on the welfare of the people, development of the country. Their demand, their facilities were not overlooked. But many a times the government also did not get any good option for this category of the people, this group of the people. Now the effects of social inequalities. Economic inequalities. Number one, under this, the social inequalities, the first of all, it comes about that economic inequalities. Economy means in the context of the income, the standard of living of the people. Economic inequality means the unequal distribution of wealth between rich and poor. In our country, we have a wide gap between the rich and the poor. This is known as the economic inequality, the difference between the rich and the poor. Social inequality means the differences between the status of people living in the society. Now that, in a simple way, the big houses, villas, they are for that the high income group of the people. And those are considered as the high people with the high status living in the society. So that way, the poor and the rich, the social inequality also exists. Both social and economic inequalities are closely related to each other because everything depends upon our income. If we are economically sound, our standard of living is high. But if we are poor, we are trying to fulfill our basic needs first. So that way, the difference exists in the society. So it is considered, it is known as the social and economic inequalities are closely related. It is found that in the government services, more than 50%, how much? More than 50% of the sweepers belong to the backward communities. Now, this is the true fact, the real fact in the practice. The sweepers in government services, the sweepers, they belong from the backward communities. These communities are also not encouraged to receive education to improve their skills. So this is also the reason behind it. They remain poorly educated and find it hard to get good jobs. This is one of the reason between the unequal status, economic inequality and the social inequality. Why they are? The 50% of the sweepers, they belong from the backward communities. And these communities are also not encouraged to receive education. By getting the education, they may also become very skilled. So their poor education system has an obstruction for their getting in the good jobs. Efforts efforts must be made to create awareness among people to remove discrimination and exploitation. Now, sweepers are also required. It is the requirement. If suppose that the backward community is not sweeping the floor, anyone can have to do so. So what is this? That we have to create awareness among the people, not to discriminate and exploit on the basis of their community, on the basis of their caste, and on the basis of that, as they are poor, so they are discriminated. So there should be a nationwide resolution to create awareness amongst all the people to remove the discrimination. Now it is a suggestive measures that awareness program to be launched. The resolution has to be taken to create the awareness, not to discriminate the people, or the system of discrimination has to be removed. It should be completely removed. And how we can have to remove this? With that, the awareness program. Then next, it is very important in these days, actually in last few years, government has started working on it. In the previous chapter already, you read about that, the free RTE, right to education. What is that? RTE, which has been passed in the 2010, which under this right to education, this is right to education. Under this right to education, government has made the effort to give free and compulsory education. Free and compulsory education. Free and compulsory education to the children from 6 to 14 years. In that right against exploitation also, there is a column given over there. The children below the age of 14 years, they are not supposed to employed. This is also one of the important fundamental rights, right against exploitation. So it is also mentioned over here, children are the future of our country. Anywhere, not only in our, everywhere, they are the future citizen of the country. And children from a large and very important section of our population. As we are the second largest populous country in the world. So this way, this section, the children from a large and very important section of our population. They are the future of our country. The children are forced to work like adults at a young age. So here we are coming to discuss about that. What is child labor, or who are the child labor? When the small children, they are forced to work like adults at their very young age, then this is called the child labor. They are employed by the producers at minimal wages and are made to work for almost 9 to 16 hours in a day. So this is very difficult for the small children to work with any of the producers. This is the very difficult for them. Even though a demography or means the figure is given about the population of our country is more than 15 million child laborers under the age of 14 in India. And they work as laborers for a meagre amount of, how much do you know? 10 rupees per day. Rupees 10 per day they are working. And how long duration? This is to the 9 to 16 years, 9 to 16 hours. So this is about that in the many of the industries. basically the fire industries, restaurants, shops, then fire factories, small industries, and the condition of these children are very miserable. Our constitution prohibits the employment of children below the age of 14 years. This is a punishable offense. If suppose they are less than 14 years, they are not supposed to be employed. So the government has made free and compulsory education must be given to all children below the 14 years of age. So 6 to 14 years. The same thing I have written over here also. 6 to 14 years of age, and this comes under the compulsory elementary education program. 6 to right to education, which has been passed in the year 2010 April. It has been implemented, and according to that, each and every child of this age group, they must have to go to the school. They are not supposed to employed anywhere in any of the work. Very important part, need of health care. This is about that. In recent years, in our country, we have seen the growth of several super specialty hospitals, which is spark the gleaming buildings or the sparkling buildings made of glass and steel. Under medical tourism, many people from other countries come here for their treatment. It has become a major earner of foreign exchange for the Indian government. This is the benefit of the private hospitals. So what it is, but the topic what we are coming to discuss is the need of healthcare. What type of the healthcare is required? These private hospitals with the gleaming buildings and the super specialty hospitals, they are not only, they are having the very attractive buildings, but the treatment in these hospitals are also very expensive. To get treatment in these hospitals is not in the reach of the common people. For the poor people, it is a dream. But many people are not able to get the treatments from such hospitals because of poverty and non-affordability. Everyone cannot afford to reach till these hospitals. India spends less than 640 per capita on the health program. This is the rupees 640 per capita. India spends less than 640 per capita on health. If we compare it from the which countries like China, around 13,800. How much is China is spending? China is spending about the 13,800. UK, this is around 1,20,000. USA also spends a lot. US spends around 3 lakh. This is we cannot even dream also for that. 3 lakh per capita is the expenditure of the US. Upon that, the public health. And our country only 640. Even China also, one of the largest populous country in the world, and it also spends around 13,800. So most of our government-run hospitals are starved for funds. They are not having the enough funds to manage the hospitals or to provide all the facilities at reasonable rates or free of cost to the citizens. The infrastructure is also very terrible, or appalling. Number of doctors and nurses are extremely inadequate to deal with the thousands of patients who visited these hospitals. Or whatever we have the hospital facilities, we have a very less number of doctors and nurses in the hospitals. The number of patients are many, and then in comparison to that, the number of nurses and doctors are very less. In some hospitals, the facility of electricity is also erratic. Means they do not have the continuous supply of electricity. Inexperienced doctors handle complicated cases, leading to death and misery. So these all are the shortcomings of our country. Inexperienced doctors. It is time for the government and people to join together and eradicate the shortcomings. Now, this is the effort which we must have to put to remove these shortcomings, these difficulties from our healthcare programs. So this is all about the chapter. This is over here. Some of the important terms which we came across inside this chapter is about the PIL, public interest litigation, OBCs, scheduled castes, and scheduled tribes. These are some of the important terms which we have discussed inside the chapter. That's all. Thank you.